Further medical evaluation, Simone Biles has withdrawn from the final individual all-around competition. We wholeheartedly support Simone's decision and applaud her bravery in prioritizing her well-being. Her courage shows yet again why she is a role model for so many. Now, Brandon, I want to start with you. You're a huge advocate for mental health in athletics. What was your reaction to this?
Yeah, just mental health overall, because it affects all of us. There's almost 320 million Americans, give or take a few, and almost 100 million are personally affected by a disorder or some type of diagnosis. And for everyone that's living with, whether it's anxiety, depression, or something else, it touches 6 to 8. If it's not you, it's a neighbor, it's a loved one, it's a friend, it's somebody within your circle. So this thing touches all of us. I'm actually smiling and I'm extremely happy deep down. Now, obviously, what we've seen, starting with Naomi Osaka a couple of months ago, withdrawing from her competition, and now with Simone, they're in it right now. This is tough for them. But I thank them because 10 years ago, actually we're 3 days away from my 10-year anniversary, where I left McLean Hospital, where I was in a 3-month outpatient program, where I was in dialectical behavior therapy, I was in mentalization therapy, I was in CBT, cognitive behavior therapy, I did one-on-one, I did neurological evaluation, I did a self-assessment where we sat down and figured out what was going on. And it was there where I realized that this thing was so much bigger than me, and I didn't know how, it was affecting me. I didn't even know that I was dealing with anything. I was just walking around thinking that I'm just being a pro athlete and I'm supposed to continue to mask pain. When you talk about toughness and mental fitness or mental health, you think about, as an athlete, you think about masking pain. I cannot be injured, whether it's mentally and physically. So 10 years ago, I stood in front of 30 cameras, networks, bloggers, reporters, everybody on the beat. They launched this nationally. This was coming off the year of the lockout. And I sat there and I said, man, this is what I just experienced. And this thing touches all of us. And right now, today, where we're at is where the cancer community was 20 or 30 years ago. Remember back in the day, and it may be over a lot of people's heads, but the big C is what they called it. They thought if you had cancer, it was contagious to a point where if you just touched them, you could get it. So in that day, we looked at everybody and said, look, we need to put faces on disorders. We need to put voices around it. We need to break the stigma. That is the most important thing you can do right now. Forget the money, forget the funding, forget hospitals. We need people to understand that you may be dealing with something and it's going to hit you eventually. Even if it's just a small bout of depression, even if it's just stress. So I'm smiling deep down right now because I remember the weight of the world being in front of me, tears in my eyes, and talking about this is what I experienced, and moving forward, we need to galvanize this community. So for Naomi Osaka, I salute you. Simone Biles, I salute you. I know it may be tough right now, but what you guys are doing, it matters, and it's pushing this conversation forward. Just yesterday, I was on with an athlete, and they called me, professional athlete, just checked into camp, NFL player, and he said, Brandon, I was diagnosed with this, and I'm trying to figure out what do I do? How do I live with this? How do I play through this? Because there was times last year where I didn't want to play at all. And I said, buddy, you're off right now. It's okay. You got to realize that these professional athletes, they got 70,000 cheering fans live. They got another couple million tuned in, and you always have to be on. This is one of those industries and one of those things that you do from a career standpoint where you always have to be on. And you maybe even throw media in that. But there's other professions where you can hide. You can take a day off. It's okay to say, you know what, this is a sick day. You can't do that in sports. So I told this young man, I said, buddy, it's okay, and you just have to realize that everybody else around you have to adapt. This is the time right now. I'm extremely excited about where the mental health community is. I salute Simone, I salute Naomi, and all the other athletes standing up today saying, you know what, mental health matters.
That's excellent, Brandon. I just want to start, before I give my answer, say, it's a privilege for me to be on the show and listen to you firsthand. We talked before the show, too, so I'm always thankful for you sharing your journey. I think that what you're doing is important. And now I'll just talk about a little bit what Brandon and I talked about before the show. So what I found most interesting here was the fact that when the news first came out that Simone was withdrawing, and everyone assumed it was a physical injury, and there was largely a consensus of like, oh man, that stinks, hope she's okay. And then when you saw that it was, that she cited her own mental wellness, that consensus fractured. It can fracture into three groups. There was a group that said, like Brandon, like that's a courageous decision. There was a group on the other side who took the opportunity to criticize her, probably unkindly, but that was their group. And there was a large group in the middle that didn't know what to make of it. And I think the reaction to that fracturing is like, yeah, well, you know what? That's America. That's the world. You know, we're all different. We're all going to look at that. We're all going to look at things differently. And I would push back on that, because when Dak Prescott broke his leg, nobody was out there saying, you know what, quit on his team. Quit on his team. Like, I have a different take on Dak Prescott's injury. No, we were unified in a consensus that when X happens, Y happens to fix it. That was the consensus, because we know a lot about the physical body, and the media and fans and other athletes have a long history of knowing what injuries lead to what sort of actions, right? So nobody would argue that the brain is far more complex than the knee. But if I told you, oh, my favorite athlete got a knee injury, the normal sports fan would be like, wow, what was it? Was it an MCL? Was it an ACL? Was it a hyperextended knee? Was it a meniscus? Was it a torn meniscus? Was it a partially torn meniscus? You know so much about the knee. But when it comes to mental health, the average fan, the average person only knows a handful of things. Was it a panic attack? Or is it social anxiety order? And then everything else gets kind of just like mental wellness. So this is why I think, Brandon, that we are headed, however clumsily maybe, as America, as a nation, as a world, to having a better understanding of mental health, and why the work that you're doing to destigmatize and talk about it more leads to a point when we see that an athlete cites a mental health concern, we can eventually get to a consensus, just like we did with Dak's injury, that we all know what we're talking about. We're all fluent. But because we're right here on the horizon of a new day in sort of talking about mental health, we're not quite there yet. But I think I share your excitement. But however clumsily that we kind of go and it's fractured a little bit, I think things are getting better and progress is being made.
Oh, 100%. I mean, wow. I mean, I said the same thing for damn near 10 years, right? Up until I left the NFL. You know, we walked the halls of Congress. We were on the mental health task force in D.C. and pushing, you know, the agenda there, talking to the insurance companies. Like, you have to cover it the same. While you just talk about it. If you have a physical ailment, oh, everybody, oh, yeah, you're hurt. You know, let's take care of you. But when you talk about the brain or you talk about the mind, people can't wrap their heads around it, right? There's so many parts of the brain and the mind that's undiscovered, and there's so much stigma around it. A lot of it, what I've found, is people, they just don't know. Like, I didn't know. Like, I didn't know what that feeling was when, and it's almost like with Kevin Love. Kevin Love and I connected last offseason. He was telling me a few stories like, oh, that was me too. Like, I didn't know when I was at the gas station living in Miami playing for the Miami Dolphins. It was 105 degrees outside. I had a hoodie on, and I would literally kneel down to pump my gas because I didn't want anybody to notice me. I didn't know what I was dealing with. I didn't know I was isolated. So a lot of people just don't know. And I'm not trying to make this about me, Chris, but this is why I'm extremely passionate about my work, and this is why I wear this pin on my shirt every single morning on the show. House of Athlete, today, Wednesday. I was actually talking to Daz Bryant this morning. I talked to Daz, and we were talking about some business stuff, and I said, Daz, what are you doing today? You know, he's like, well, you know how it is. Monday, Tuesdays, we work. Wednesdays, we recover. Thursday, Friday, we get back to work. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's exactly what I'm building here. On Wednesdays here, there is no physical training. We have mental health practitioners here. We have focus groups, which really is self-assessment, because we got to continue to force the general population to understand that it matters. Because pro athletes were placed on this pedestal, and they tell us you have to always be on. You have to perform. You can never take a day off. So what we have to do is continue to bridge the gap in the mental health community and make this thing an everyday conversation. Take it from a taboo topic and destigmatize it. So here on Wednesdays, that's all we do here. It's like you can go recover, you can go do vinyasa yoga, or you can go jump in a mental health fitness class, which really is a focus group, which really is a form of therapy. Or if you want to do one-on-one, you need a little bit more talking, you do that. Because this is the time for us right now. Everybody knows going through 2020 that